Now we will start to learn some more complicated logic operation. First of all, I would like to introduce the not. Uh, in the most of the case, I will not using it, but in some special case, because in case someone are using this one, you at least can understand what this SQL talking about. But there always other way to actually get around from. For example, here we say we are not department ID equal to 50 means when I find the department ID equal to 50, that's not what I want. So you always have another way to do that. So when I have the where, then not department ID equal to 50. If I run this, okay, you can see they have 90, 60, 100. When you go down, you don't really have the 50. And you have 61 row, but you always have another way. You say, as long as your department ID is not equal to 50, that's what I want. So when you run this one, you still get a 61. You just have exactly the same results, okay? So for this one, let's see, I want to find first the salary greater than 50,000. That's not what I want. So for those people whose salary is greater than 5,000, that's not what I want. And not salary greater than 5,000. When you go over here, that's all the salary not above 5,000. So you have 49. You actually have another way, just more straightforward. Say the salary gonna be smaller or equal to 5,000. And when you do that, you still get a 49. Okay, so for the not, I will not introduce too much. You just at least you understand what they're talking about, and you always have another way not using it. Okay, so and now we will start to introduce two more important logic operator. The first one is AND. So here, when we say salary is greater than 7,000 and job ID is equal to ST man. When we run this, we have 3 rows. You can see these 3 records, they all ST man and all their salary is above 7,000. Okay, so that's what we have. And then you can do some practice. I want to find the employee whose manager ID is 100 and the department ID is 50. So over here, then for the condition, it's manager ID equal to 100 and department ID equal to 50. When we run these sets of 5 records, and if we go here, they are all 100, they are all 50. Okay, so what are they gonna do over here? It's logic is simple. Just if you have the condition, you need to satisfy all the condition. That's what we want. Now we introduce another logic operator is OR. So we want to find the employee where the department ID equal to 50 or department ID equal to 60. We choose one of them, and then okay. Department ID. So when we go over here, they either 60 or is 50. Okay, so that's a record. So you can be one or the other way. And then the same exercise, I want you to find the employee. Either the manager ID is 100 or the department ID is 50. So you just department ID 50 or manager ID equal to 100. And that's what you find 54 row, and you can check. Okay, here is 100, so it's one condition, although it's not 50. Here it's 50, but it's not 100. But as long as you satisfy one of these conditions, if you satisfy both, we're definitely going to choose it. But as long as you choose one condition, we will choose. Okay. So from here, you can see the logic, the basic logic is relatively simple. And now we will try to move to a little bit more complicated condition here. So over here, I would like you to see here, and the first one, the second one. Copy. Okay. So over here, when we have the parenthesis here, and when we run this one, let's see, we have 10 records. And when we don't have the parenthesis, okay, that's a second one. And then when we run this again, we have 14 rows instead of 10. So how to understand the difference between this? It's just like 1 plus 2 times 3. That's one way. If we add the parenthesis, then times 3. As you can see, these two calculations give you totally different results. Okay, over here, because times have higher priority, you 2 times 3 first and then plus 1. But when you have the parenthesis, you have to add 1 and 2 together first before you times 3. So you have the different results. The same thing over here, and actually have higher logic priority. So if you don't have the parenthesis, it's like I will combine here condition first. I want to find the people whose salary is greater than 8,000 and department ID is equal to 50. Let's go together, and then or manager ID is 100, so one or the other. But when we have the parenthesis adding over here, that means you must have the salary greater than 8,000, and then you either be in the 50 or you are manager ID is 100. So the logic is actually different. So over here, I'm not asking you to understand the difference of the logic, but at least keep that in mind. When you have the parenthesis, they do change the logic operation. Okay, so that's how you're gonna understand this. So now let's move towards a more complicated logic, and I want you to try to write before I give you the results. I want you to choose an employee whose manager ID equal to 100, or the department ID is 50 and the salary is greater than 4,000. So, and if you make it correct, as I will say, some of you still would be able to write that. Okay. But from beginning all the way to the end. But I would really recommend you to write any complicated logic in a structured way I'm telling you. So the right way to do that is select from, and you will see I will use where. That's the three things you need to start first. And then, although no matter how I emphasize to have the structured way to do that, they always someone think they are smart, they can just write from the beginning all the way to the end, but you will have harder and harder time when we move to bigger and harder, like SQL. So I really just it's really up to you. So you will reach certain point to realize you have to do that in a structured way. Although right now you probably are not able, still will be able to do that, but when you move on, you will have the trouble. So, but I will still teach you the right way how to do that. So select from here, that means, okay, that's the three keywords I'm gonna have. Then first I have the start because I don't specify any column, so that's a start. And when I look at this one, you coming from the employee. So for the table is from the employee. And have the where condition. You will see that's something complicated, okay? You have the three things all going together. And coming over here, then the way to do that is, I would like you to treat that as a black box. So over here, you will see on the top of that, you have one condition. On the top of that, you have another condition. Although inside each condition, that's other things. But on the top of that, I know there are some condition 1 and condition 2. I'm using C1 and C2 to replace them. And later on, I will replace it. But right now, I just use condition 1 and condition 2 as a placeholder. So when we have this one, I need to know how these two conditions are connected. The logic operation over here, you can see it's OR. So you will put the OR here. And then once you put the OR, what's the benefit of this OR? When you have this OR, you naturally break it into two smaller pieces, and 1 and 2 are irrelevant to each other. So when I write C1, I don't really care about C2, okay? Because C2 has been connected by OR, it's already there. I don't really care about it. And when you write C2, you don't care about C1. And because they are using OR to connect them, I already finished that. It's the same thing when I select from where. When I put the parameter for the from, I don't care about the parameter for the select. I don't care about the parameter for the where, because I have the structural way. I already break it into a smaller piece. So now I move to C1 and I see manager ID is 100. So manager ID is 100. So I just directly put it, okay? Because that's just one condition, so I just directly replace it. But when I move to C2, I realize that's some complicated. It's more than one condition. So over here, I need to use parentheses to make sure, okay, no matter what calculation inside, I need to do the calculation inside first before we go outside to do the operation. And over here, we will see they have two operations here. If you are experienced, you see that's just two conditions. You can just write in one way. But let's say if we are the beginner, I start with, I have two conditions, so I will have condition 2, 1, and have the condition 2, 2. And before we write this specific case, we will see they are connected by AND. So we specify the logical operation AND first before we go any detail. So now C21 is here, the department ID equal to 50. And the salary is greater than 4,000. So when we run here, and you see you have 14 records, and the way you write is very not intuitive. It's not the way we get used to, but you will see when I write this one, I just break it into all the smaller pieces. I never have the structured way to see that in the overall view, but you don't really need an overall view. As long as you break it into the way we are telling you, when you fix the structure, you already have the overall view. And when you have this one, then you start solving this puzzle, smaller puzzle, just one by one. Okay, so the same logic operation for this one, you have start select from where. That's the first you're gonna have, and then you specify the star, you specify the employee, and over here that's the condition. So on the top of that you will see I have the two conditions. I have the condition 1, I have the condition 2. I just use this as a placeholder. I know they are connected by and. That's the first one. And when I look at this salary, it's first one, it's relatively simple. It's less than 800. It's just one of this one, so I just directly write it. But the second one is more than one, so I just quote that. But over here, because that's just two, it's relatively simple. So over here, I just directly write it. Okay. So when it has two conditions, it's still relatively easy for you to have. But when it's more than 3 or more than 4 conditions all together, then you have to use our structured way to do that. Use treat it as a black box to do that case by case. So when you have this one, that's the 43 records you can have. Okay. And if you don't have the parenthesis in the way I'm telling you to have the structured way, and when you run this one, you will get 54. So make sure you actually write in your code in the structured way I'm telling you. Okay, when you go into another layer and it's complicated, don't forget the parenthesis. That's related. Okay. So now that's the exercise I would like you to do. And keep that in mind. If you don't use the structured way I'm telling you, I would say you will definitely have a hard time when you start working on this. So over here, still select staff from employee. And that's the things you're gonna have. And so you will see I have the condition 1 and the condition 2. Although condition 1 is complicated, condition 2 is complicated, but over here we will see it's connected by all. Okay. Let's naturally break it into two smaller pieces, and then when I look at the condition 1, okay, it's not a single one, so I need to use the parenthesis. You have then, so over here it's manager ID equal to 100 or manager ID equal to 130. For these two, they have the two conditions, so I need to have the parenthesis to put them together. So the department ID is equal to 50 and salary is greater than 4,000. Okay, so that's the things you need to have, and if you make it right, you are supposed to have 16. And then we move to the next one. The next one is the same. So over here you will see the conditions are so many, so you have to see on the top of that it's C1 and C2, how they were connected. So that's the C1, that's all the things, and C2, that's all the complicated things, but they are connected by AND. So I will put the AND here. Then I will start to solve the C1. Because that's 2, I can write it then just in a sequence. Salary less than 8,000 and manager ID equal to 130. C2 is also another layer of the two conditions, so department ID equal to 50 or manager ID equal to 100. And when you run this one, you get no data. Does that mean you are wrong? No. It's possible for you to have some data set, database, they don't have the data satisfy your condition. Let's say I have the school, and you want to choose the people who has a GPA 4.0 in a certain class, but it turns out this professor is really harsh on the grade. They don't really give A to the student. So you don't have anyone have 4.0 in this class. Then when you write the SQL to select, you don't have the data. So, but as long as you make it right, you should be sure like you are making the right selection. Okay.